Most of the time, doubt does not feel like philosophy. It does not feel like sitting in a classroom calmly asking, "What can I know?" It feels much simpler than that. It feels like being stuck. Imagine you are walking home and the road splits in front of you. One path turns left, one path turns right, and suddenly you do not know which one leads home. So you hesitate. And in that moment, the question is no longer abstract. It matters because you cannot just stand there forever. You have to move. This is where Charles Sanders Peirce begins his account of belief and inquiry. For Peirce, doubt is not just a thought in your head. It is not a neutral state of curiosity. It is not the peaceful attitude of someone who simply wants to know. Doubt is an interruption. It breaks the smooth flow of action. When you believe something, you can move through the world, you can choose, you can act, you can continue. But when doubt enters, action hesitates. The world no longer feels usable in the same way. Peirce puts it like this, quote, "Doubt is an uneasy and dissatisfied state from which we struggle to free ourselves and pass into the state of belief." End quote. That word matters, struggle. For Peirce, inquiry begins because doubt bothers us. It irritates us. It creates friction between us and the world. We do not search for belief simply because we enjoy collecting ideas. We search for belief because doubt has made action difficult. It has stopped us in the road. Peirce says, quote, "The irritation of doubt causes a struggle to attain a state of belief," end quote. And that means inquiry is not just about thinking, it's about getting unstuck. Once doubt is settled and belief takes hold, the struggle ends. We are able to act again. That is already a very different way of understanding belief, because most of the time when we talk about belief, we treat it like a sentence inside the mind. I believe this, I do not believe that. I agree, I disagree. We imagine belief as something private, something internal, something you could write down if someone asked you, "What do you believe?" But Peirce thinks this misses the point. For him, belief is not mainly a sentence in your head. It is a habit in your life. He writes, quote, "The essence of belief is the establishment of a habit, and the different beliefs are distinguished by the different modes of action to which they give rise." End quote. In other words, a belief is not just something you claim. It is something that prepares you to act. A belief tells you what to expect. It tells you what matters. It tells you what to do next. So when Peirce says, quote, "Our beliefs guide our desires and shape our actions," end quote, he is giving us a test. Not a test of what someone says they believe, a test of what their belief actually does. Because for Peirce, the real meaning of a belief is found in the conduct it produces. To know what someone believes, do not only listen to their words. Watch where they go when the road splits. But here we have to be careful. This is not a crude behaviorist account of belief. Beliefs are not identical with actions, and beliefs do not always produce immediate action. Frank Ramsey makes this point clearly when he writes, quote, "It is not asserted that a belief is an idea which does actually lead to action, but one which would lead to action in suitable circumstances." Then he gives a simple analogy. Quote, "Just as a lump of arsenic is called poisonous, not because it actually has killed or will kill anyone, but because it would kill anyone if he ate it," end quote. That is the key. A belief is dispositional. It is not necessarily what you are doing right now. It is the state from which you would act if the right circumstances arose. So let's go back to the fork in the road. If you suddenly remember with full confidence that the left path leads home, then you go left. There's no drama, there's no hesitation, there's no philosophical crisis. The belief has done its job, it settled the doubt, and made action possible. We can make sense of full belief in this way, but most of life is not like that. Most of our beliefs are partial. You are standing at the fork in the road, and you think the left path is probably correct, but you're not completely sure. Now the question changes. It is no longer just, do you believe left is the right way? The question is, how much do you believe it? This is exactly the problem Ramsey takes up in Truth and Probability. If full belief is a belief at one end, and full disbelief is a belief at the other, then partial belief lives somewhere in between. Ramsey says we can easily assign numbers to the obvious cases. Full belief is 1. Full belief in the opposite is 0. Equal belief between a proposition and its opposite is 1/2. But then the harder question appears. He writes, quote, "It is not so easy to say what is meant by a belief 2/3 of certainty," end quote. What does that actually mean? Does it mean you feel 2/3 convinced? Does it mean the belief has 2/3 of some inner intensity? Does it mean there's a little confidence meter inside your head and it is filled up exactly 2/3 of the way? Ramsey considers this possibility. Maybe degrees of belief are degrees of feeling. Maybe stronger belief just means a stronger belief feeling or feeling of conviction. But he rejects that almost immediately. He says this view is not only hard to measure, it is observably false. Why? He writes, quote, "The beliefs which we hold most strongly are accompanied by practically no feeling at all. No one feels strongly about things he takes for granted," end quote. That line changes the whole picture. Your strongest beliefs are often the quietest. You do not walk around with a dramatic feeling of conviction that the floor will hold. You do not feel passionate certainty that the gravity still works. You do not constantly affirm with emotional intensity that the earth is round. You just live as though those things are true. They are so settled that they disappear into the background. And that means belief cannot be measured by how intense it feels. Sometimes the beliefs we feel most strongly are the ones we are least settled in. Sometimes intensity is not confidence. Sometimes intensity is insecurity trying to sound confident. And sometimes the beliefs that structure our entire life barely feel like anything at all. So Ramsey moves the measure of belief away from feeling and towards action. He writes, quote, "We are driven therefore to the second supposition that the degree of belief is a causal property of it, which we can express vaguely as the extent to which we are prepared to act on it," end quote. This is where Ramsey extends Peirce. Peirce says that belief is a habit of action. Ramsey says the degree of belief is how far that habit carries you. How much are you prepared to rely on it? How much would you risk before checking? How much inconvenience would you tolerate to verify it? And this is why my original example was inspired by Ramsey himself. Ramsey writes, quote, "I am at a crossroads and do not know the way, but I rather think one of the two ways is right," end quote. So what do? If you're fully confident, you just go. If you are less confident, you might start walking, but keep your eyes open for someone to ask. And if asking requires you to walk far out of your way, whether you make that detour depends on the strength of your belief. Ramsey says, quote, "The more confident I am of this, the less distance I should be willing to go from the road to check my opinion," end quote. So he proposes using the distance I would be prepared to go to ask as a measure of the confidence of my opinion. That is a beautiful example because it shows that partial belief is not some mysterious inner glow. It is a practical posture. It shows up in how much checking you need before you act. It shows up in how much risk you accept. It shows up in what you are willing to do when action cannot wait for certainty. And this is why Ramsey turns to betting. He says, quote, "The old established way of measuring a person's belief is to propose a bet and see what are the lowest odds which he would accept," end quote. A bet is not important because gambling is special. It is important because a bet makes belief answerable to consequences. A bet forces confidence into the open. It asks, what are you willing to risk on this being true? So if I say, I am 90% sure, Ramsey wants to know what that means in possible action. What odds would I accept? What costs would I bear? What plans would I make? What risk would I take? A partial belief is not a weaker sentence. It is a weaker or stronger readiness to act. And in Truth and Probability, Ramsey argues that these partial beliefs are what we mean by probability. Probability is not just something floating out there in the world. It is also a way of measuring degrees of belief. And the laws of probability then matter because they become consistency rules for our belief systems. They tell us whether our degrees of belief fit together or whether we are confused in a way that can be exploited. This is the point of the Dutch book argument. A Dutch book is a set of bets that guarantees you lose no matter what happens. And Ramsey's insight is that if your degrees of belief violate the laws of probability, then your betting behavior becomes vulnerable to exactly this kind of trap. Go back to the fork in the road. Suppose you say you are 2/3 confident that the correct path is left, but you also say you are 2/3 confident that the correct path is right. That sounds like just a little inconsistency. But Ramsey's point is that it is not merely abstractly irrational, it has practical consequences. If your beliefs are connected to the bets you would accept, then someone can use that inconsistency against you. They can offer you a set of bets that look acceptable one by one, because each fits something you claim to believe. But taken together, those bets guarantee you lose. So that is what a Dutch book shows. Bad belief is not just bad theory. Bad belief can become bad action. It can make your life internally incoherent. It can make you easy to manipulate. It can make you accept risks that no consistent person would accept. And that brings us back to the larger point. Belief is not merely what you say. It is not even what feels intense. Belief is what settles doubt into action. It is what becomes habit. It is what you are prepared to rely on when the road splits and you have to move. And the strength of that belief is revealed by what you are willing to risk. That is why beliefs are not what you say, they are what you bet on.